Hello and welcome to another episode of Community Storytelling. I'm Lissa Kreisler, and sitting next to me, believe it or not, is David Wells, the CFO of Netflix in your hometown, Los Gatos. Hi, David.
Hi.
Do you like Dave or David?
David's good.
Okay, Mr. Wells.
That's too formal.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm talking to somebody from Netflix. That's just amazing. I'll tell you why. Because I drive by that gorgeous building all the time and say, what goes on in there? It's a big building.
It's a several now at this point, but we think we've got enough in terms of the space. And you know, those folks who might be watching, or you remember, like a lot of hand wringing and angst over the buildings. But I think we can be proud of what's there now, and the fact that we've taken all of them, and we're still there, and we're still around, and we're growing. And we've got over 110 million global subscribers, and that still has that little tagline that says Los Gatos, California.
I'm one of them. And I got my nice personal note about the dollar increase in the monthly fees, which I actually think is a bargain. I don't watch as much Netflix as I could because there's so many fabulous shows. But you start watching that, it's like you're getting your money's worth.
Yeah, most people feel the same way.
Yeah.
So far, so good.
How many employees do you have in that building?
Let's see, in Northern California, we have about 2,000.
So that's not all in Los Gatos?
No, it is. We have a couple that are not quite in Los Gatos, but let's call it all in Los Gatos.
Okay, nobody's in Scotts Valley anymore.
No,
that's where it got its start,
That was the humble beginnings. That was the very first distribution center when we were a DVD company.
Been there, done that. Yep. How many of those DVDs did you never get back?
Quite a few, and there's lots of colorful stories of, like, my dog ate my homework, and my daughter mailed this, to Alaska and so forth.
So who finally decided this really isn't the way to go anymore?
Well, believe it or not, Reed and his co-founding team really had the current, what you think of as Netflix today, the Netflix streaming service, in mind when they launched the DVD service. They knew that DVDs had a shelf life in terms of the technology was going to be supplanted, the internet was going to be ubiquitous and robust enough to support streaming, but it was a long way and a lot of vision to get there in terms of, you have to see the ecosystem, which is Roku being one of those today. That started inside Netflix. Now that it's, that's a fairly big company all by itself.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, it started within Netflix. That was the very first sort of Netflix player.
Really? Wow, how about that? So you have 2,000 people, did you say 2,000?
2,000 in Northern California.
In Northern California. Yeah. How many cubicles do you have in the place? Are they all cubicles?
No, they're not.
Never been in.
This factors in, we try to leave it up to each team in terms of how that workspace looks. And so I myself don't have an office. I have a sort of a conference room that I use on a semi-regular basis, and if I'm not there, other people can use it. And I have a little crash table, and that's about it.
So do you bring a laptop in?
I do. I carry that wherever. That comes with me everywhere.
And you just go sit wherever there's room, and you're the CFO.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I think it reflects sort of the modern workspace. Like if you go into any startup in the city, or if you go into any of the sort of tech centers of the US today, what you're going to see is you're going to walk in and it's going to feel a little bit like a cafe. There's going to be a coffee spot. It feels like you're inside a cafe. There's going to be open seating, open table seating, and then a smattering of different sort of workspaces depending on the team. And that's what you'll find in Netflix as well.
So what kind of teams do you have?
Well, we have web designers that when you open your Netflix and it looks a certain way, and there's merchandising, how that content appears to you, how those titles appear to you, that's all personalized for you. Looks different for another person. They may have different rows. They may have different things in the rows that are being shown to them.
Apparently you know me very well because it's very easy for me to look at.
That's good to hear. We're living in an increasingly complicated and title-rich world, right? There's lots of newspaper headlines about how much content is being created, including by us and by others. And so what that means is it places a real emphasis on how do we get a show that we think you're going to like quickly in front of you, because we think we have about 90 seconds when you sit down. We used to call it moments of truth. When you sit down at your couch, a lot of people aren't destination, viewing, meaning they sit down with a particular title in mind. A lot of people are browsing. They are more sitting down and saying, whew, it's been a long day. I think I've got about an hour. I want to find something that I'm going to like and engage in. And so we've got just about 60 to 90 seconds to put something in front of you that you're going to engage in and like. And so you ask a question about who do we have in those buildings. We have data scientists and deep math people that are thinking about how to take the viewing behavior that you have already given us and then extrapolate that forward and put something else that you might like in front of it. We have website designers that think about sort of the design of the website, where your eye flows, how you're going to engage. Do you like video, sound? When do those things come into play? We have finance people like myself. We have lawyers. We have, who am I forgetting? We have talent people or HR people focused on that. And then increasingly, we have a world's diaspora of global experts, that are helping us face off against these same problems, solving these same business problems across the world.
And what you never want to hear somebody say, there's nothing on TV.
Or nothing on Netflix. And we do get that. I mean,
how many programs?
It's both a flattery and a challenge for us. It means they are turning on our app.
Yes.
So we're winning that sort of moment of truth. But we know that we need to consistently win that, and we're not going to do that if people are not finding something to watch.
So how many programs do you have, do you think?
We no longer think of it in those terms.
Yeah?
I would say, do you mean globally or in the US or,
Well, I don't, on my Netflix.
Let's call it 40,000 titles
Oh my goodness.
available to you.
So there's always something on to watch. Always.
I think so.
Yeah. So getting back to that gorgeous building that I drive by and say, what goes on in there? Do you have a cafeteria or a restaurant or?
We don't. We sort of draw the middle line. No, we're not quite big enough that we feel like we need like an on-site cafeteria. So we do use local caterers to bring in lunch.
Okay, but you bring in lunch.
We absolutely do. There's great choices around us, but probably not enough that would warrant sort of swamping everyone, leaving the building and trying to get them back in an hour.
That's true. That's true.
And so we, like many other companies, feel like there's great convenience in just providing that for folks. And then, they can structure their day around the fact that they know that they're not going to have to leave and go grab lunch somewhere.
Do you have a dry cleaner in there?
We use we don't pay for that, but we allow Purple Tie to, have the service on site.
I was half joking, but okay. What other amenities do you have? Maybe I want to apply for a job. Are you hiring?
No, well, hopefully the IRS still lets us provide those amenities.
Yes.
There's a great debate on that right now, but definitely there's tremendous value for both the individual employee and the company in terms of just the efficiency benefit of it.
Are you 24/7 in that building?
We essentially are, sure. People are working, now that we're a global service, we're sort of always on everywhere. And so, you never can predict what your work hours are going to be. If there's a meeting with Singapore, there's a meeting with Amsterdam, there could be a meeting, fair game for a lot of times in the day.
Netflix TV on in the lobby, so I come in and I see a Netflix show.
We do. We try to have a running sample of shows that are on the service today.
What's your favorite show?
Well, it's a little bit dark, but I'd say the latest is Mindhunter, which is David Fincher has directed. It's based on a book that was the original conception of the FBI's profiling program for serial killers and sort of serial crime. It takes a little time to develop, but it's cerebral, it's good, it's interesting from a human behavior perspective, and sort of historical as well in terms of following that FBI program.
What season is it on?
It's on its first season. It's brand new.
Within
the last month.
Okay, because I always find out when something is on like the 5th season. I say, oh my gosh, the binge watching. Do you binge watch?
I don't have as much time these days. My binge watching is on an airplane, so I'll try to get some work done and then burn through like 2 or 3 episodes of, say, Stranger Things. The season 2 is out, so I'm trying to become current with the rest of the U.S. in terms of not having seen the whole thing yet. But I'm a couple of episodes in at this point.
I must admit, sometimes I say, I wish they wouldn't put the whole season on at once, because then you want to watch the whole season at once. So I like network TV. 1 hour a week.
Well, we feel like that's in your control, right?
Yes,
and your freedom. If you want to meter it out over a little while, that's up to you.
It's tough. It's tough. Did you ever think growing up you were going to be a CFO of a company like Netflix?
Well, I would even pause that I ever think I was going to be a CFO.
Did you ever think you were going to grow up?
Yeah, well, grow up for sure. CFO probably not. I sort of fell into it. I was hired to be the planning person for Netflix in our first international expansion as a DVD company into the UK. I didn't really even think about sort of taking the top job in finance. I like the sort of planning and analysis and the strategy side of the business. But you know, you have to kind of commit at some point in your life in terms of
you have to grow up.
track.
Yes.
And so that was my skill set at that point.
Wow, unbelievable. And when people find out you're with Netflix, you know, maybe some friends you meet, do they start complaining right away or give you their opinion?
I don't consider it a complaint. I mean, even down to the TSA guy when you're in the, you know, checking in through the airport, as soon as they see anything that has Netflix on it, they'll usually tell you either why this show should have stayed on longer,
Yes.
or why shouldn't this show been renewed for a third season. I think it's great. I think it really speaks a lot about the positive sort of brand experience that people have with it. And even when we try to inspire sort of our own employees, we don't we lean into sort of making the world a better place, but we don't have a lofty sort of product or ambition. We're not saving lives, but we do sort of bring entertainment and joy to people. And
You do.
we don't want to underestimate that, especially based on the reaction you have in any public place or in friends, or if you're at a cocktail party or whatever. People love talking about Netflix.
Well, I wanted permission to ask you about Bloodline because it really needs a season 4. That became my favorite. You know, it was the type of show where you didn't want to watch it, but you had to watch it because it was so depressing. There was such a dark side. But Kyle Chandler, I mean, come on, you're going to watch it. It was great, fabulous.
Great storytelling, great characters.
Oh, and the acting.
It didn't quite, in terms of like, you know, the production quality and how much we were spending on it, it didn't quite find a large enough audience. And that's why we sort of, we think we drew a middle ground appropriately there in terms of concluding it, you know, and making sure that it had a nice narrative.
It could have gone on. It could have gone on. And speaking of Bloodline, let's say I have a script. Somebody gave me a script, and I think it could be the next Bloodline. What can I do with that script?
Please don't send it to me. I would say we have a very formal content ingestion process.
Yeah.
And one thing that people probably underestimate or not really aware of is a long time ago, probably 15, 20 years ago, the Hollywood studios started getting sued over people claiming that what they were producing was actually their idea.
Right.
So we have a very formal ingestion process, we call it, in terms of making sure that it's not casual, it's not somebody throwing it over the transom in a personal email. And so there is a content submission, website and email that they can put that through that goes to our Beverly Hills sort of content, or our Hollywood at this point, content group. And that's the right way to submit an idea for a script or a screenplay.
Is that on the website?
It is.
Okay. I really don't have anything. I was just asking, just in case somebody does.
Yeah.
But Bloodline, keep it going.
Okay.
So, do you ever get to go down to Beverly Hills?
Quite frequently.
Okay.
And now it's Hollywood.
Hollywood.
The older office was in
Yes.
Beverly Hills. Now it's in Hollywood.
Okay. So, who have you met? Drop some names.
Oh, gee. Let's see. We have, I generally, no one wants to run into the CFO in the office,
I don't
right?
know. I might
Especially on the
disagree.
pitch meeting, right?
I might disagree with that.
When they're talking about setting up the production budget, they really would rather just keep the CFO over there. I'm talking on the pitch side, on the content, on the talent side. Look, we had a very articulate Sylvester Stallone. And people don't even realize he is, we have this sort of American Ninja reality series called American Beastmaster. It's an obstacle course.
Yes.
It's a little hokey, but you know what? My 10-year-old daughter and I really like watching it together. It's one of those things that kids like just based on the physicality of the obstacle course. He's great. Most people forget he wrote Rocky. He's not just the bruiser guy who starred as the Rocky, but he actually wrote that story. And he can be fairly articulate, so he was kind of fun and fun to meet.
No, that's a good name to drop.
Angelina Jolie has a new movie called First They Killed My Father.
Yes.
Pretty heavy watch
Yeah.
about Cambodia and the Khmer Rouge. But she came in and talked to a group of us about that, about the filming experience. And for us, it was our first foray into sort of a bit scary production of like filming in Cambodia. And there were former minefields there, and there are children in the cast. And just kind of trying to get comfortable with the exposures on all that. So that was great.
Now, when you have a show like Stranger Things, or Bloodline, or House of Cards, or Orange is the New Black, before you even put it on, did you know it was going to be big, or were you surprised at some of these shows?
It's a little bit of both. If we had a particular human being or a particular algorithm that could predict, the next huge show for us, we would just go ahead and do that, right? And we'd sit back and let that happen. So I think predicting a show that reaches sort of what I would describe as zeitgeist level, or really popular, the show that everyone's talking about, and if you haven't seen it, you almost, even if it's outside your genre, you're kind of compelled to watch it just to kind of participate in the conversation, is very difficult. And it's a combination of current events, trends, reactions, the quality of the execution of the show. That said, we do have viewing behavior on people, and we know what people like. We generally can size audiences, and that gives us an indication for, the production budget that might be reasonable for a show. Should we spend $5 million an episode on this? Should we spend $1 million an episode based on what we think might happen with the audience? But you always want to leave room for creative genius and the unpredictability of something being huge. And I think that's the benefit of the new generation of television, is we don't really need or require what we describe as appointment viewing, where Hollywood used to have to count on the Nielsen ratings of a Thursday night or a Friday night, really making the decision of whether they're going to complete the season of that television. Now we can let something build an audience. Mindhunter is competing with Stranger Things 2, which is a very broad show. There's a lot of co-viewing. There's a lot of families viewing it, even though it can be a little scary for your younger kids. But it doesn't have to care, because people can watch it later. In a month or two after they've finished Stranger Things.
Are there any shows that got away? You look back, you say, "Oh, we knew that was going to be a big hit."
There's always there's more and more people sort of entering the TV game now, as just evidenced by a couple of articles. Amazon paid top dollar for Lord of the Rings and the ability to extend that. That'll be judged in 5 years whether or not that was a good investment or not, including by us.
Yes.
So it's going to take some time to really understand whether that was a good investment or not.
You guys must think it's pretty cool that Amazon started doing what you're doing, because you led the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's great validation for the category, and I think what we describe even to our own investor base is we're not yet in a market share battle. It might be coming. Likely coming, but right now what's happening is the more people are entering internet television, the more it's expanding that category. And so it's putting pressure on the traditional cable guys and the satellite guys, and they know that. But it's great in terms of expanding the broad range of storytelling across the world. It's a great time to be a fan of content in terms of you've got lots of choice, and you've got lots of companies like ours competing for your attention and your in your revenue.
So you never thought, being a business person, you'd get to watch so much TV, did you?
I don't think so. No. I definitely would not have picked me in a media business 20 years ago.
But look at you now. Yeah. Look at you now. So you live in Los Gatos, so you're like, what, 5 minutes? How long does it take you to get to work?
About, I can bike it in about 20 minutes.
And do you bike often?
I'll take the Fifth Amendment on that.
Okay, but that was the plan. That was the plan.
I did a short 2-year stint in Amsterdam. We just got back. We lived in Amsterdam, doing my same role. I got back in July, and we biked a ton there. And we loved it, and the city, and the sort of the city is just really set up for biking. And so we wanted to try to bring that back. I think my wife has done a better job of bringing that back than I have at this point.
Well, we won't tell anybody. But you're in Los Gatos. You've lived here a long time, I think.
Yeah.
You have a daughter.
Yep.
What do you love most about Los Gatos?
Well, so for the particular neighborhood, it's that sense of community. I think that's really playing out. We don't need to go into the North 40 debate and all that.
No
sure
politics.
You may have other guests that do that. Yes. But I really think that's the tension being felt is in the preservation of that sense of community, that we all as human beings love that smaller scale and that humanness that comes with the smaller scale, even as our societies are growing and our cities are growing and everything's growing. And so it's really that trying to preserve that sense of community, and we love being able to bike ride to Blossom Hill where my daughter goes, bike ride downtown, and avoid all the traffic that's sitting on the road trying to go over the hill. But just being able to do that is great.
You got a favorite restaurant?
Chin Chin, we like Chin Chin, but honestly, we move around a lot. So lots of good choices.
Yeah, but there's no place like home, huh? No place like home.
Definitely.
So what's next for you? Are they going to send you to any other countries?
Well, no, I think they want me home at this point. That was the
Yeah.
sort of mutual investment in having me gone. I'm a little bit more effective being here. It does mean less travel for me, so that's a good thing for my
Yes.
family and for me. But certainly the next phase for us is just continued expansion. And we're relatively new in Asia, so you'll see us do more in sort of Korea, India, Southeast Asia, and big places like in Asia.
As long as you always remember your home is Los Gatos.
I'm pretty sure that's solid, for a lot of us. And at this point, the company's been, we've been in business for 20 years. And a large part of that, sort of tied with Los Gatos. More growth in Southern California now as a media company and globally. But we have tons of our employees now are embedded all through the community in terms of schools and part of the community at this point.
Do you ever talk about the old days? I mean, sometimes I think Reed must want to pinch himself because look where you've come from where you started in Scotts Valley.
He's super, rightfully so. He and the rest of us are super proud. We're mindful of sounding like the old dinosaurs to the new group of employees that are coming in. With our growth, the reality is 1 in 4 employees has a year or two of experience, not 10 years. And so increasingly, they don't really want to hear about the good old days 20 years ago. It's about today and what it is today.
Well, you have the good old day discussions in the back room.
Sure. And with alums that come back and are now doing other things and catch up with them.
Oh my goodness. Well, it has just been great, great, great having you. I'm so excited that I had you in, and we'll talk about Bloodline. I'm not giving up. I don't give up easily. And sometime I'm going to come knocking on that front door.
Great. Well, thank you for having me.
How great is that? David Wells, CFO of Netflix. And now I'll think of you every time I have it on, which is every day. So there you go. Community storytelling. You got a story to share? You have a story to share, I should say, properly. You just go to kcat.org and nominate you or someone you adore. And may I just say thank you. Thank you for being with us today at KCAT TV 15.